Today is Friday, December 12, 2003, and this is the beginning of an interview with Fay Binen in the Historical Society Cottage at the Westbury Memorial Public Library. Mrs. Binen is 81 years old, having been born on September 4, 1922. My name is Susan Kovarik, and I will be the interviewer. I am representing the Historical Society of the Westburys, an official partner in the Veterans History Project. Mrs. Binen, would you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
I was in World War II. I served in the Women's Army Corps, the WAC.
What was your rank and where did you serve?
I got out as a Tech 5, which is a corporal, and I served at Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, Fort Slocum, New York, and Governor's Island, New York.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted because I felt that it was our war too, not just the men's.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Brooklyn with my mother and my sister, and I had no brothers in the service, so I thought someone should go in.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Very, very much. It was a complete change from my civilian life.
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, first we got on the troop train to go down to Georgia, which means that instead of going right to Georgia, we went through Chicago and then south until we finally got to where we were going. And then I began my basic training in Georgia, which made a soldier out of a civilian. And it was an awakening for me, a complete awakening to life. I had lived in a very sheltered community all the time, and I suddenly realized there were so many other different people in this world.
Do you remember any of your instructors or any of the people that you trained with?
Yes, we had a captain, a lieutenant man, who was my, she was the big instructor, and there were two lieutenants under her, and
what were some of the things you had to do in training?
We never walked. We marched constantly and ran. And it was very good for young people. And I have to tell you, before I went in, I had gone on a very strict diet because I thought you had to be slim like the girl in the poster. And I lost 20 pounds. And I looked great in my uniform. And I started to eat everything that they served. From running and exercising, you got hungry. I ate potatoes for breakfast. I ate potatoes for lunch. I ate a good dinner, and nothing was happening. Everything was wonderful. And we had a lot of fun, a lot of work, but at the end of the 8 weeks, we became soldiers. And as for my weight, when I went on to Fort Slocum, things changed.
Can you tell me about Fort Slocum?
Yes. I was sent to Fort Slocum, the country club of the Army, the most beautiful post. It was an island off New Rochelle, and it was small. There were only 108 women in total, and there were men, of course, but we were kept completely separate in beautiful white brick barracks. And after working hard in basic, this was a picnic up there. And we got our jobs, which they made me a mail clerk, which had nothing to do with my civilian life. And I started to eat again. And in 1 month, 10 pounds came on. So I had to turn in my uniforms and get bigger. No problem. In 2 months, another 10 came on. Then I decided I have to no more potatoes for breakfast or lunch, only for dinner. And that's what happened, and I remained at that weight. I never went down after that. I remained where I had been originally. And the food, I must tell you, in basic training, we ate off tin trays. Horrid, disgusting, because they slopped the food and it went from one on top of another something. And we ate with everybody in basic. We got up to Fort Slocum, we all ate with the men in the mess hall, and again we had tin trays, but not for long. Within about a month, they opened up our own mess hall, and we had china and silverware, and we had cooks just for us, our own cooks, and they asked, well, how would you like your breakfast? What would you like today? What do you want for dinner? Providing it was available. And I had to watch my diet because otherwise I would have gone up more. And the food was ample everywhere else, but it wasn't as good as I had in Fort Slocum.
So you didn't do the exercises and other...
In Fort Slocum, we walked to work. The day was short. They reveille came at 5:30 or 6, but nobody got up. I mean, it was just that you took it easy. I happened to be a breakfast eater, so I never missed breakfast. My buddy stayed in bed till after 8. I brought her coffee, but I had already eaten and done what I had to do. And then you went to your office, and nobody killed themselves, I can tell you. It was an easy job, and you worked until you went to lunch, and then you took an hour and a half for lunch, whatever, and you could eat either in the PX or in your own mess hall, depending on where you wanted to go, but no more with the men. And the day was over by 4:30, and then you had to go. You were free for the rest of the day. No more work. No more marching unless they had a parade, which we had quite a few of. We had parades not only on the base, because we had a colonel who was a little nuts, and he insisted on a big parade for the WACs when we got our good conduct medals, once a year. And he had a parade. Is not just a parade. At 1 o'clock you closed your office, and they had a dry run for 2 hours. Then you went back to your barracks, you showered and you dressed, and then we came out for retreat, which was at 4:30, I believe, when they blew retreat, and then the flag lowering at 5 o'clock. But we had to be prepared for this, and he was very strict about it, this colonel. The whole post closed every office, and how to show. The men hated us for this, because there we marched to the band, and we girls liked it, but the men hated it. And then we used to go on parades up in Westchester. It was patriotic time, and they were selling bonds. And we marched to songs that went, lend a hand and buy a bond. And I have pictures from the parade from the newspapers. And, the girls loved it. The men just despised it. But that was the fun in the Army for us.
Did the men march too?
At the big parade for the WACs, yes. And some of the men had to go when we went off the post up in Westchester. They just looked for every excuse not to, and the women loved it. There was no problem for us.
Now, you said you were the mail clerk. What did that involve?
It involved mostly keeping records for the prisoners of monies that they received. We had a lot of prisoners on the base, American prisoners, boys who had misbehaved. And it involved, sometimes I went out and delivered it around the post to where the officers it went to. It was a very small post. There was no terrible involvement here. It was easy. And most times I stayed in the post office and had a good time, the way everybody else did. And then when I was in the post office, it was really a wasted job for me. I felt my ability was much more. But this is where they put me, and they didn't ask questions. They put you where there was an opening. I have to tell you, before I went in, I had finished 3 years of college. Only 3. And then I took a government job for the war, and I was an inspector for the Navy. And I liked it, but it wasn't in the service. It was a civilian. And I found out I couldn't get out of that job. I was frozen. So I said, I'll go in the service, and then I'll get out. They released me to get into the service. But I found out with the 3 years of college, everywhere I went, how come you only finished 3 years? How come you didn't finish? How come? And when I got out of the service, I went back for the year. Got the degree.
How long were you at Fort Slocum?
18 months.
And can you tell me about where you went from there?
Then I went to Governor's Island. But by then it was nearly the end of my service. But there they used me pretty well. They put me in intelligence, and I had an interesting job, and more up my alley. Of course, I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't tell anybody what I was doing, which didn't make me happy. But I enjoyed the work, and I was flabbergasted to see how much information they had on every officer from this area, because we had all that, secret stuff. And then I stayed there from the time I got there, and I got out in June. I wasn't there too long, but I did enjoy that work.
Can you tell me a little bit about it now? What you did? And
when I got out of the Army, I went back to school for a year. And I had met my husband at that time, and he went back to school for a year to finish too. And we got married and had children, and now I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I'm retired now, but I did go to work. I had lost my first husband in '65, and those days mothers didn't work. But my doctor said, you better go to work for your head. Keep yourself busy. So I took a job, and I went in to help out for 2 weeks. I was there 17 years. And I enjoyed it, and that's that. And then I remarried after a few years, and I had the 2 families, and I lost both husbands by this time.
So do your children and grandchildren live around here?
I moved here because one son lives in Plainview with his wife and children. My other son lives in New Jersey. I don't see as much of him. And my husband's son lives in Hollis Hills, Queens, but I don't see as much of them either.
Now, where did you live before you moved here?
I lived in Far Rockaway.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
No. Only the WAC veterans. And we're looking for new members all the time. But I don't belong to any of the Jewish war veterans or the foreign war veterans or anything like that. I'm not a joiner unless I can do something.
Now, the WACs, that was a new position for women in the Army, right, in World War II. Did you notice people's attitudes towards WACs and everything? Can you tell me about that?
Of the men was not good. They considered us very low in their esteem. I had nothing but bad comments from my cousins who were in. Don't let her go in. They're all bums. They're no good. They're this, they're that. But I went, and I happened to make friends with the finest girls, more my caliber. Of course, I brought some of them home to meet my mother and sister. I never brought anybody home who wasn't nice. But I lived with some women who I wouldn't let in to clean my house. But it was all restricted. It was all white. It wasn't that it was mixed colors. Just they were not my class of people.
So you were able to go visit your family when you were in the service?
I was stationed in New York. And I had this buddy of mine who was from Elmira, but she was a New York savvy girl. We went down to New York City almost every night, 4 nights a week. We went to the USO, not to dance, not to fool around, but to get free theater tickets. We saw every show on Broadway. Good or bad, best seats, that I couldn't have afforded if I were paying, because we were through with work at 4 o'clock. And if you got off, we had to take a boat from the island, so you took an early boat and you went at a train. But we had to be back by 12:30 because that was the last ship from New Rochelle, and after that we would have been AWOL in the morning. But that was my evenings then, and I went home every weekend because I lived near New York, you know. I was stationed there and I lived there, and while the country was on ration stamps and looking for a lot of things, I brought them all home for my mother from the PX. We had, I'm not a smoker, I didn't bother. I brought her coffee, I brought her candy, I brought her turkey at Thanksgiving, I brought butter, I brought anything that was rationed we had there. And so for that it was good. I didn't have much money, but my mother used to give me money each week to bring something back.
Now, I don't remember, did you say your mother, where did you say you lived with your mother before you...
My mother was a widow, so I gave her a pension. So my $21 a month, I think it was 16 or 15 or something that I made.
What do you think of the women in the service today?
Today's women are completely different from mine. Today's women are in for the benefits. They saw what the government will offer them. I'm not too much in favor of half of them because I feel they're not in to serve the country so much, although they are being sent away. In World War II, we didn't have to go overseas. They asked us, and I refused. They had asked me, and I had been sick. I had had pneumonia, and I refused to go. But this war is very much different, the country, and they go. But I say they're looking for the benefits. They went in to get the schooling. They went in to get anything that they could, so let them serve. We never had a gun. World War II. we had sticks. We exercised with sticks. So in case, I guess eventually they would give us a gun, we'd know how to hold it. But this war, the women are armed. It's completely different.
Do you think it's good for women to go into combat, or?
I don't. I don't think it's good. It's good to go into service, yes. It's an excellent teaching tool for all women and boys if there's no war. But unfortunately, we're in a bad situation. But I feel the service was an awakening for me. I actually matured, and so does everybody else. But now it's a completely different ball game.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I don't know what I could add at the moment.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to interview you. It was very interesting. Okay, would you tell me about the movies?
Movies were 35 cents on the post. So we'd go see almost everything. And bowling was 10 cents a game. We had a bowling alley. So you went to the movies either with somebody you were dating or you paid your own 35 cents. Many's the time I paid my own. I didn't want to be bothered with those boys. And there were 1 million boys to one girl, so to speak. It was very easy to get a date.
Okay, thank you.